have you actually read the Declaration of Independence? I haven't read the whole thing. I've read bits and pieces from it, and I've seen people quote it, but I decided to read it. I actually thought it'd be longer. I thought it'd be like a long 15 to 20 page document, but it's not. And really, it's the first, I would say, like 8 paragraphs, or maybe the first page or two that you need to read. When they get into the King George violations, you don't really need to read that. But let's talk about these 2 things real quick, and then I got a reminder for you about the Nazis, and then I have a reminder about why you should care about this information, what you can do with it on a daily basis. This is the Better Sovereign Show. I'm your host, Colin Stucker. We're going to get to something that's going to help you become a sovereign, free-thinking, critical thinking, better human. Member of the Better Human Podcast Network, or really just part of the Better Human Podcast. It's all in the same place now. Get the newsletter over at colin.coach and get all the shows. That's the best place to go. From the Declaration, we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by the Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. That's probably the most famous line. The second highlight I have here that I want to talk about, that to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed, that whenever any form of government becomes destructive of these ends, it is the right of the people to alter or to abolish it and to institute new government, laying its foundation on such principles and organizing its powers in such form as to them shall seem most likely to affect their safety and happiness. Even as I read that, I kind of have this epiphany that in the Declaration, the founding of the American government, it has, in the most important document probably ever created for human sovereignty, and the basis of which the government of America has been built, it says that if a government becomes destructive to the ends, which are the unalienable rights, which personal property, freedom of speech, things like that, obviously the Bill of Rights, etc. And among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. If those are being violated by the government is supposed to be dismantled, restructured, gone, basically removed and replaced. The epiphany I had was I was thinking about how that's written there, but you actually, no single person and no real single group actually could dismantle the American government. And I'm just thinking to myself like, okay, does that mean it's just, like I've said before, it's become a Frankenstein? It's just this thing that grows and grows and grows. And as it seems with all governments throughout history, which is very important throughout history, which is also today, most people think we live in a post-history world. That's an illusion. All governments throughout history have collapsed. All civilizations have collapsed. Why do we think America would be any different? Maybe because we have the most freedoms and there's certain kind of checks and balances, like hopefully that's the case. But it seems like every year as they write more regulations and they interpret laws in a new way and they set new legal precedents to just ignore the Constitution, make exceptions to the Constitution, the Bill of Rights. Like, well, if it's for safety, we have to give up this or give up privacy or do that or whatever. And it seems like over time, the more of this happens, the more the American ideal that it was founded on will basically, for effective purposes, be non-existent. It's literally in our founding documents that if the government oversteps and violates, which I believe the government already is and has been doing for a long time, but really in the last 2 years, it's been taken to a whole nother degree. The government is supposed to be dismantled at that point. I don't know, that's pretty crazy. And so here's two other things here that are important. The Nazis came to power in a democracy, right? Never forget that. Our individual rights weren't given to us by our leaders. We were born with them. Our leaders can't give us anything. They can only force us to behave in certain ways. If we truly want to be in charge of our lives, we need to find the tools necessary to circumvent the bullshit ourselves. This is from a book by Kurt, Sonneman. It's Bitcoin Sovereignty Through Mathematics, I think is what it is. The Nazis came to power in democracy. They didn't have a constitution and a Bill of Rights and certain things like that. It's not obviously a one-to-one comparison, but even Lenin said that democracy was indispensable to socialism. It was like the path towards socialism. And a lot of people in America think socialism would be good or is a good thing. There's a lot of communists and Marxists alive today that think that we should redistribute wealth and we should really do it right this time, citing Marxism or communism or socialism, even though it's never worked in history. And every time it happens, lots and lots of people die and it's just very bad. But some people have those ideas because they don't understand history. They don't understand basic economics. They don't understand a free market. And honestly, they don't understand a lot of things like the basics of human nature and whatever. Let's talk about freedom, why this matters to you. And yes, you should read the Declaration. It gave me goosebumps as I was reading it. Let's talk about American freedom. People think we live in a post-history world in which the things we learned about in school no longer happen. That's a complete illusion. Our way of life can collapse any second. The threats are beyond our understanding. And that's why it's so important to stick to the basics of freedom that has made America great thus far. Because there's absolutely zero guarantee that things are going to stay this way. And a massive amount of data pointing to the unfortunate reality that it probably won't. That was my Instagram post today. I wrote that after reading the Declaration. You and I are mostly helpless in the face of this. And that's why I recommend having Bitcoin and your passport, because those two things are basically your get out of jail free, not free, but get out of jail card, or your escape the collapsing civilization card. You can leave early, go stay somewhere else, watch from the sidelines. I do not want to be caught up here. And I wouldn't mind getting caught up if I didn't have kids, but having kids, it's just a risk I can't bear. Like, I'm not going to participate in a civil war or a revolutionary war or anything like that. No. Even though part of me maybe could be called to arms that way if certain things happened. It looks like it's going to get worse. So like, I don't even know. I mean, it might just become so freaking obvious that we do need to replace the government or fix it in some way. I don't even know how that's going to happen. It's just really crazy stuff. But again, this idea that we live in a post-history world, we don't. History happens every day. There are going to be history books written about 2020, and then 2021, and then 2025, and 2010. 10 to 2009, whatever. All these things are going to be in history books. And the victors are the ones that are going to write the narrative. So for you, what you need to do, and what we all need to do, and we all need to remember, in every comment, statement, way we vote, way we spend our dollars, whatever, and every single thing we do, we need to remember the Declaration of Independence, the Bill of Rights, what this country was founded on, these unalienable rights, socialism, Marxism, communism, how these things are a threat to our way of life, how they will literally destroy society at an even faster clip. And if we talk to a politician, if we leave a Twitter comment, if we talk to someone else, if we're having a conversation, we need to always be steering the direction into the basics, the first principles, the reminders of what America is founded on and why it has been the best country in the history of civilization. And if we don't cling to these principles with everything we can, that we will go the way of every other civilization in the history of the world. We will collapse. We'll be replaced with something else. And there's no guarantee that that something else will be better. It'll actually probably be worse, because people will try to look at the American experiment and say, oh, well, they didn't get it right. Let's try something completely different. And they'll probably make all these really bad ideas for some kind of communist, collectivist, Marxist, fascist nonsense, which is just stealing from one to give to another, which is a violation of natural law, which is why that never works, because it is one person having power over another. And that's what we don't want. And that's why Bitcoin is so important, such a miracle, because you don't need trust. You don't need power. You actually can't control it. It is decentralization. By matching incentives, the network works together and people that own Bitcoin work together, and nobody is forced to do it. You can participate or you can't, but you can't come in and change things. You can't come in and say, you have to do this. I know better than you. I'm right. You're wrong. It's going to be this way, which is what democracy is. It's mob rule. It's 51% say, my ideas are better than yours, so let's change it or whatever. And as you see, every single time there's a election, it's just a clown show of one psychopath for another. Because people that even go into that or get into politics are people that basically want power over others. And they convince themselves that they're doing it for the good of mankind because they want to make things right, when all they want is power. It's just a corrupt, broken system with the wrong incentives, the flawed, backwards incentives. And it's why, Socrates hated, I think it was Plato hated, but I guess Socrates by extension, because some people think Socrates was actually just made up by Plato, but Plato hated democracy. He didn't trust the average person to be able to vote because he knew that the average person was a moron. And it's even true today. We have more information than ever. The average person spends their time watching like mainstream media and basically outsourcing their thinking, outsourcing their health, health, nutrition, whatever, to what the experts say. Take this pill, take this, that, get a jab. And we think that people aren't going to just think the way they're told to think. Unfortunately, this is how it goes. And this is why we always have these things like fourth turnings. And we have these historical cycles that happen. Hard times create strong men create good times create weak men create hard times. And it goes on. We are living in a time of abundance that is the byproduct of strong men that came out of World War II, came out of hard times and created prosperity. And then over time, as new generations come through and politicians appeal to the masses with their identity politics and the victim narrative nonsense, and we forget and move further away from the founding ideals of what this country was based on, which we've been doing for over 200 years now. And every single election, every single cycle, every single societal change or common status quo narrative or whatever that comes to fruition moves us one step closer to collapse, is basically what it is. So this is just a reminder. You have to remember and do your best to stick to the principles, the basics. Always reinforce that in everything you do and everyone you talk to. And maybe with enough of that collective adherence to the things that got us here, which is still prosperous. We still have a massive amount of abundance, but we're sliding in the wrong direction. We stick to the basics that got us here. And hopefully that will help us get through some of these good times that are creating weak men and women. That's it for today. Better Human Newsletter, Colin.coach. Subscribe. Also on YouTube and iTunes and Spotify or Google Play. Daily show. Help you become better human. I'll see you next one.